So in this video, what I want to talk about is this is probably one of the more challenging in isolation. If we were to just go straight after this one particular trigger of a panic attack, probably one of the most challenging ones to do, subways. Okay, subways, trains, stuff where these are triggers that you can't really titrate the exposure intensity, right? You're either on the train or you're off the train. There's very little in between. And those can be most challenging. So, what do we do for those? Luckily, every case like that has come in where people were having panic attacks on the subway. They would just avoid the subway for that reason. There were always plenty of other triggers around to play with first. So luckily once, there was one situation where I went straight for the subway exposure. That was in the beginning of my career though. So I didn't know better. Now I do know better. The lady eventually succeeded, but it took us a long time because there was a lot of like building yourself up to it, and eventually she was right in the subway, but that was not the right way to go about things. The better way, the way better way, the kind of better way where you're going to be better probably in like 2-3 months is to hit all the other triggers first and leverage the work we're doing on those other triggers to change your relationship. I love that this camera pans now. To change your relationship to your own anxiety and to your own panic, such that by the time you're actually going on the subway, you're going to already be going into it with this total like I don't give a ish attitude in regards to panic attacks. Because the moment you don't give a ish about panic attacks, about having a panic attack, is the moment all of your panic stops. This is one of my catchphrases. If I was to summarize the solution to the panic problem in one sentence, I would say this: the moment you become 100% willing, truly willing in your heart to face a panic attack and be like, whatever, it happens, is the moment your panic attacks no longer happen. You might at first, when you first reach this attitude, right? When you first are like, I'm totally willing, you might reach a 8 out of 10, a 9 out of 10, but you'll never, ever reach a 10 out of 10. And the moment you start seeing that, I'm never reaching really that 10 out of 10, that 9 out of 10, next time turns into an 8 out of 10. Next time turns into a 7 out of 10. Next time, 6 out of 10. It quickly starts dropping because you're feeling more confident and you're no longer fearing that catastrophe, that peak panic experience. So that is the best way to go about doing the subway exposure, meaning we hit all the other triggers. We leverage all the other triggers to acclimate you to the state of panic, to get you comfortable with your stress, with what the panicky sensations feel like. Because like everybody with a panic attack problem, you're incredibly panic avoidant. You're very excessively so avoidant of all stress and anxiety. It's normal, right? Because basically you got traumatized by your stress, which is unfortunately a cycle, right? If you get traumatized by your stress and then you get stressed, then you get more stress and you kind of repeat the trauma type of thing, right? So we have to get you out of there. And the only way out, and this is another one of my catchphrases, the only way out of the fire is through the fire, right? But there's different ways we can do this. So if we just threw you in the subway, that'd be like throwing your full bodies in the fire. They're gonna burn, right? But it's also the fastest way out. So there's two types of exposure. There's flooding and systematic desensitization. Flooding is we just set off those panic attacks one after another until they completely stop, right? It will work, but it's very difficult, and most people will quit therapy if that's what we were doing. So what we do is systematic desensitization. We give you bite-sized chunks, right? So what we would do in the case of the subway type of anxiety is we would find out what are your other triggers and work on those first. As far as how we would work on those, so in my practice, what I use is a combination of ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, with exposure therapy. So the way this works, so acceptance and commitment therapy is wonderful for interrupting recursive anxiety. It's wonderful for reducing anxiety sensitivity. It's another measure that we can, a test we can give to someone who has a panic disorder. And we will see time and time again, anxiety sensitivity is sky high for people with panic disorder, right? Just because of the nature of the disorder, the anxiety sensitivity ends up being very, very high, but it doesn't have to be. We can reduce it, right? And so ACT is wonderful at reducing that anxiety sensitivity, meaning that when you feel anxiety, you're able to just sit with it and not start freaking out about it. So that's why ACT is wonderful here. And so what we do is we, traditionally, back before better studies came out, it used to be just exposure therapy, right? And we would just do exposure therapy till all the triggers are gone, till the panic is gone. And that works. That works. But there's a better way. We can do a more holistic solution. We can teach you an attitude, like a state of mind to enter, like I don't give an ish. I'm rethinking my use of the word ish right now. And whatever, you know what I'm saying, right? I don't give an ish if this happens, right? We can actually teach that attitude. And so what we do is we leverage the exposure, right? So, we put you in those nerve-wracking situations little by little by little. And we use the spike in anxiety that it causes, because it's not gonna, again, our goal is not to create crazy amounts of stress. Our goal is to create little manageable chunks of stress that resemble the panic state, right? But are not full-blown panic. And we leverage the anxiety that comes up and then use ACT interventions to help you acclimate yourself to those sensations. Simultaneously, we're also doing other things, like we're also reality testing and removing safety behaviors. Two very, very, very important things. Not removing safety behaviors will prevent you from having a corrective experience. Corrective experience is essentially what we're after here. And reality testing is important for all those catastrophic thoughts that you have, right? We have to be able to evaluate the truthfulness, or in Colbert's words, the truthiness of those worries, of those preoccupations. So people typically preoccupy themselves over having a heart attack, some sort of respiratory distress, and derealized or going crazy. Like, I'm going to go crazy, lose control of myself. Those are the three primary things that people typically with panic attacks will worry about. So we have to put them to the test, right? So we have this, it's almost like if panic was this like monster or this demon that's like whispering all kinds of crap, scary crap in your ear. And by now, you probably have had already a bunch of panic attacks. So you're probably realizing, so far, none of this came true. So you might be suspecting that, hey, maybe it's actually just like, they say Satan's the father of lies. These demons, maybe they're all they do is lie. They just deceive me to keep me stressed out, or to torment me. I wonder if there's a way I'm not sure, right? I'm speaking as you right now. You probably would be saying, I'm not sure if it's true or not. Like, I don't know if maybe I could have a heart attack. I mean, maybe I could suffocate to death. I mean, maybe I could go crazy. But I wonder if there's a way that I could test that. Is there some way I could put that to the test? And there's different little ways we can do that. One of those ways, it actually kind of combines with this idea of paradoxical intent. It's another intervention that's used to treat panic attacks. And it's been shown in isolation, just with paradoxical intent, you can actually treat successfully a panic disorder. The problem is that most people react to paradoxical intent with resistance, in which case we actually end up using that as just another level in the exposure hierarchy. Am I using too much technical language? If I am, just leave me a comment and I'll try to make sure to re-explain certain concepts. So for paradoxical intent, it's a potentially very powerful intervention. It's also one way of actually reality testing your worst case scenarios, right? So, for example, if you think you're having a heart attack, right? If you're worried about having a heart attack, so cardiac preoccupations, you might think to yourself, well, if someone is having a heart attack and you had them do cardio exercise, like doing push-ups, that should make it worse, right? That should like actually make them keel over. There you go. So basically, paradoxical intent is all about doing the opposite of what you fear. So if you fear having a heart attack, go and do the stuff that you think will cause a heart attack. So during the state of panic, when you are worried about having a heart attack, you start exercising on purpose to jack up your heart rate. And then you see, right? So it can be terrifying. I know it can be absolutely. I used to have a panic disorder, so I know how terrifying this stuff is. And so doing this kind of stuff can feel like almost foolish. Like, why would I do this if I think this could be risking my life? The reason why you're doing it is because you're trusting your rational mind, right? You have thought this through rationally already. You realize that I've had this happen so many times and I haven't had a heart attack. You realize that I've been to the doctor. My doctor said my heart's fine. Everything's fine. You know that there is no reason for this to be true. Yet you have this demon has whispered in your ear so many times that it's convinced you that it could be true. So that's why you have to put it to the test. Because you have all the reasons in the world to believe that this is not true. And it feels like potentially risking your life, but you have to keep on reminding yourself that I've done the math. This cannot be true. All I need now is absolute evidence that this is not true. And the only way you'll get it, sometimes, it depends on the situation. Sometimes there's other ways of reality testing. But in some situations, the only way you'll get that evidence is by putting everything on the line, right? So in the case of cardiac preoccupations, let me rephrase that. It will feel like you're putting everything on the line, but you're not actually putting anything on the line, right? It only feels that way because of your concern. So that's more or less what we do for the treatment. We reality test, we do exposure, we reality test, and we're combining that with ACT to acclimate you, and reality testing and all that good stuff. And we're acclimating you to your stress responses. We're getting you comfortable, again, with higher and higher levels of stress. The more comfortable you get with the higher stress levels, you will see almost immediately, as you make progress through these exposures, you will see almost immediately a reduction in panic attack frequency and panic attack severity. The reason why panic attack frequency will go down is because as you get more comfortable with higher stress levels, you need to experience higher stress levels to set off the panic cycle. When your panic disorder problem is at its worst, right? The slightest stress level is capable of setting off the panic cycle and spiral you up into a full-blown panic attack. But as you reacclimate yourself, and reality test everything, and remove the safety behaviors that you were relying upon, and you get comfortable with higher levels of stress, your panic cycle won't get set off as easily, right? And our goal ultimately is to get you to be willing to experience a 10 out of 10 anxiety level, meaning a full-blown panic attack. The moment you are willing to go for that 10 out of 10 is the moment your panic is over. At most, you'll experience a 9 out of 9, and 9 out of 10. Sometimes you'll be caught chasing your own tail. Like the moment you're chasing panic, like I really want this 10 out of 10 to happen, you're just never going to find it. You're never going to find it because you're interrupting it. The solution to panic attacks is paradoxical in nature, right? The more you push away, the more you try to pull away from panic, the more it gets you. The more you move towards it, the more it disarms. Once you become fully willing to have it, it disarms completely. So that is what I would do first for the subway situation before we even put you on the subway. I would want to exhaust every other trigger first and use those exposures for those other triggers as an opportunity to change your relationship towards your own anxiety. So by the time you're getting on the subway, you already are going in with this 10 out of 10. Screw it. I already remember what it felt like to approach a panicky situation with that 10 out of 10 willingness, and I saw it succeed time and time again. I'm doing the same thing on the subway. And then you get on the subway. So that's how we get around this whole issue of this binary issue. You're either on or you're off with the subway situation. And there's other situations very similar to it. Another situation is very similar is fear of flying. Again, I would target everything around it. Unfortunately, with the fear of flying, people do oftentimes come in with that as an isolated source of panic. And that can be very challenging. So the best thing we can do there for the fear of flying is we can play around with little like light versions of exposures, and that can get us some way a little bit. But ultimately, for the fear of flying, the best we can do is prepare you and do a whole lot of rehearsal on what you're going to be doing. Meaning, so we would identify all your safety behaviors. We would identify all of your catastrophic thinking. We would identify all the different ways you can reality test, and you would go in there basically with like a whole sheet, a game plan, and you would apply it there live. Ideally, you have some cash to burn through, so that like maybe you can do multiple flights throughout the week. So the fear of flying is one of the most annoying, wrong use of words. One of the more challenging things because of the lack of opportunity for not only systematic exposure, but just exposure in general, because flying is expensive. But ideally, with the subway situation, so far everybody has had other triggers. So that's how I would go about resolving it. If you have any questions, let me know. Leave a comment in the thingy-majiggy. And if you want some panic tips, I have a newsletter that I update every now and then, and it goes out regularly every couple of days. You get some new interesting tips, approaches. I probably cover some of the stuff that I just mentioned in this video, maybe in greater detail. So it's also in the thingy-majiggy, meaning the description box. Feel free to sign up there. If you need help with panic attacks, feel free to contact us. I do free consultations. I'm available throughout the week, usually. As you just click the link in the description box, you can see what time works for you and just sign up. And we'll chat for 15 minutes. I'll tell you what I think about your situation, how I would approach it, if it's even suitable for my type of treatment. So far, most people have been. And answer any of your other questions you might have. So, hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video.